Hi guys, my name is Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now today, I want to talk about boundaries. I said I would talk about this in a video earlier this week, and so I want to touch on it now, because boundaries in relationships specifically are incredibly important, especially romantic relationships, because you are potentially overlapping on each other's lives a lot. And so having these boundaries and being able to communicate around them and work with them is incredibly important, because if you don't have them, if they're not set up, if there's something that's going to kind of break them down, or if someone is continually overstepping, then it kind of leads to all manner of different problems, from things like breakdown of confidence and commitment to a complete kind of removal of various awarenesses around the relationship, or even just plainly just pissing each other off to the extent that it doesn't work out anymore. And the problem is that with these kind of situations, they don't need to be like that. And I've seen successful relationships that would have done incredibly well fall to pieces just because people can't stick to boundaries that have been set, or continue to push the envelope whenever they can. And so here are a handful of things. I think we've got, six things that kind of all roll together in regards to both setting decent boundaries, but also in regards to communicating around them, so that you don't run into these problems where you've set these boundaries but then you can't actually talk around them, and it just continues to erode after the fact. So the first one, and this relates back to one of our videos from earlier in the week, is be self-aware. Be knowledgeable about yourself, and know what scares you, know what you like, what you dislike, how you want to be treated, and communicate that. Because then it's a case of, for instance, if I turn around to Hannah and go, there are going to be times when I'm having a hard time of stuff, when I'm miserable. I don't need you to keep asking me if I'm okay. Once or twice is fine if I seem really out of sorts. But for the most part, I'm going to go quiet. I'm going to remove myself. Maybe I'd appreciate a hug or something. But otherwise, for the most part, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to process. As soon as I've processed it, as soon as it's gone through my head and I've been able to work it all out, then I'm going to come back. I'll be fine. Give me a couple of hours just to sit, chill, be silent, kind of effectively meditate on it, and then come back to you. And then it'll be fine. But that again it's being kind of specific. It's saying how I'd like to be treated. It's why, because I understand the way that my own brain works and the way that I process stuff. It allows me then to set that as kind of like, if I'm in a really miserable place, I'm just going to be able, I've already communicated that to her, and I can turn around and say, some bad shit's going on in my head. I just need a little bit of time to just sit quietly and work it out. In which case, it's fine. Again, then, it's the second thing, being clear about your needs. Again, like, if you've said, I just need quiet time. Not specific, it doesn't say why, it doesn't really inform on what it is that you want to do and what the cause is, and it doesn't aid understanding on the part of the other person. So taking the example that I just gave again, if I literally just came in and I looked like shit and I was obviously miserable, and I just went and sat quietly and isolated myself, and then when she came in, asked me if I was alright, and I just snapped at her, that's not an effective way of being clear about it. It's not an effective way of being even reasonable and nice to your partner. And so, being understanding and specific, and kind of, again, also making sure that you continually communicate on these things. I'm not going to say, this is how I operate once, because by the time it actually comes up to me having to work in that way, or expecting that boundary to be in place, they may have forgotten it, because it's not come up until now. And so, having that clarity, that repetition, and so on and so forth, that's useful, to say the least. The next thing, the third thing, is in being kind of direct and clear and so on and so forth. Being specific is also incredibly important. So And this is one of my pet peeves that I've had with all kinds of people in various different forms of relationships, spanning far outside of intimate relationships. But it's like, if I turn around to someone and say, okay, well, this is the order that we'll do things in. I'd like to hear about your day, review this work. Then we can sit down and have dinner, and then we can just chill out, and do whatever. There's that order, and it's specific, and it can start as soon as the first activity begins, or saying something like, right, well, okay, so we've got the these bits and pieces going on in the house, but this needs doing. If you can go and just stick this stuff outside by 9:30, 10 o'clock, something like that, then I can go and grab it from there and go and do whatever else needs doing with it. It's a whole load of other bits and pieces, being specific, being clear, especially in regards to your expectations as well. I expect you to maintain a standard. So when you've gone and got yourself into trouble, I care about you, sure, but I'm not going to make excuses for you. It's not letting people off the hook. The number of times that I had when I was a manager and I had people's girlfriends and things calling in saying that their other half was sick, when on Facebook I'd already seen that person had been out drinking the night before and stuff like that. And it was just that boundary wasn't there, and so then it was me, a manager that knew I was in the right, not being able to firstly accept the excuse, but also having to come down hard on the girlfriend as much as on the person that hadn't come into work. Same with boyfriends and things as well. It would be doting partners doing their significant other a favour to try and get them out of trouble, but it never worked. And yet, if there was a boundary in place, if they had made that other person accountable for what they had done, and so on and so forth from the get-go, then firstly, they wouldn't have had a problem. They could have just been supportive after the fact. But also, it drives that other person to be a better person. They know they're not going to have some loving, safe space to hide in, and so they have to be better. They have to maintain a standard, both for that partner and for everybody else. The next thing, the fourth thing, is that as much as when it comes to communicating around these things, it can cause arguments. Yeah, as with the calling in sick thing, that's where emotional blackmail can come in, where you'll have someone going, oh, but if you loved me, you just call in and get me off the hook. Well, no. And if you say no, then that can spin into an argument. But two things: stay calm, and also, if you actually love this person, if you care about this other person that you're having this discussion with in any way, shape, or form, then be clear about the fact that you care about that person, but also be clear about the fact that those boundaries need to be maintained. Yeah, it's the case of going, look, I love you, but I'm not calling into your work for you to say that you're sick when it's entirely your own fault for drinking too much. Yeah, it's like that moment bit where you can potentially see whether things are going to work or not. Because if it's, look, I love you and I want to help, but at the same time, you got yourself into this mess. It's got nothing to do with me, and this is your attachment. If they start overstepping boundaries, trying to get you to do the things that they've asked, getting you to do whatever else, and not in a joking way. I mean, actually trying to emotionally blackmail you or rant at you, get angry at you because you're not doing these things, then it's a case of maybe reassess whether or not that's going to work. Because what happens when you actually set a very solid boundary that may be dependent on other people, on work, on other things, on children, and that person oversteps that as well, or just plainly ignores it. It's that kind of area that you can start judging. When you say, yeah, I love you, but this is where the boundary is, this is where I can't do anything for you, whether how things go after that is going to be indicative potentially of where things can go in the future. Now, the last two things are very specifically about communicating to one another around these things. The first one, the fifth point that we've got here, is using I statements, or using statements that refer purely to yourself. Because that way, if you're saying I feel, or I think, or I would like, then it's keeping the distance between the two of you whilst you're actually discussing the boundary that's there. Yeah? So it's not a case of you overstepping a boundary onto their turf and going, well, you should do this, and you need to do that, and you need to be more like this, and so on and so forth. It's a case of you going, well, look, from my side of the wall here, this is what it looks like. If it doesn't look like that from your side, clarify. Let's have this discussion. It's a case of being able to approach it as two people working together around this one thing, rather than you trying to impose on the other side of the wall and having them do the same. If they start turning around and starting, you, this, that, and the other, then no, sorry, you've got your side of the boundary to work with. That's the agreement here, that's the deal. Because if that deal isn't there, then that's where the problems start. And again, I said that I'd relate this to saying I love you and stuff like that. I love you can mean a lot of different things, and if you're not, as said earlier on, being self-aware, what it means to you, how you want it to be reflected, clear about what your needs are in regards to love and affection, being specific in regards to the kind of way that you expect it to be present in your relationship, and then being clear about the fact that it is present even when you're talking about other things. When it comes to addressing things individually or personally, seeing whether or not your emotions add up with what you're saying, and what you're saying adds up with what's going on, and the same, seeing from the other side if they are impressing themselves over onto your side of the boundary and not listening to your side of things, not living up to your expectations, not living up to the things that they've already seemingly volunteered for and agreed to, then that's a set of indicators for then you to maybe assess whether or not that relationship is going to maintain itself, whether or not it's going to be worthwhile in the long run if things keep breaking down. Now, the last one, and I've talked about this before in regards to other things as well, but the last one is try the praise sandwich approach. Now, the praise sandwich, for those of you who haven't seen my other videos that have kind of discussed this or touched on it, and those of you who just haven't come across it in your day-to-day, praise sandwich is you start off with something positive, you hit the negative criticism kind of area, and then you end it on something positive. So, in a relationship, in regards to a boundary and stuff like that, in regards to part of the planning or whatever it is that you're having a discussion about, let's say that someone doesn't do the dishes, and they agreed that there would be a boundary here, and there would be times when they would do it, and they've never done it at all. And it's come to the time where you need to discuss it because you've been away for 3 days, and now all there is a mountain of shit in the sink. And so you come back and you go, okay, look, I really like the fact that you've taken care of the house, and I appreciate that you've been hard at work and stuff. The dishes, though, you said you would have them done, and they're still there. There's like 3 times, 4 times as many there as there were when I left. And so, whilst I love you and I'm tired and I just want to come home and cuddle with you and all the rest of it, it's there. So, as much as I'm really happy that I'm back and I'm here with you, that it's not been taken care of. So there you've got the positive of, you're being understanding, they've been hard at work, the rest of the house seems fine. But then you're bringing in the criticism saying, well, yeah, that one thing, that big thing that we talked about, we worked out, we've touched on before, but you've never engaged with, it's still there, and you actually had a reason to do it this time. So what the hell? Followed by, again, like, I'm glad I'm back, and I'm glad that we're both here, but it's still a present thing. You know, you've got that positive at the end where you're going, look, I'm glad I'm here. But the criticism doesn't get ignored. It's just sat there in the middle between the two positives, and it's a solid way of putting it across, because talking about the positive first primes people to be receptive. Then you hit them with the negative, the thing that doesn't work so well. But then, you know, coming back again, being clear about the fact that even though there's a criticism here, even though there's something negative, you do still love them, and then coming in at the end with, again, you know, all I want to do is this, or you know, I'm really glad that you seem to have had a really productive time at work from whatever else is going on, you know. But it's not dismissing the criticism just by adding a positive in at the end. So those are the 6 things here that I would touch on in regards to boundaries with people, both around communication and in regards to setting them in the first place. Which again, the setting of them has to be a communicative process anyway, because you've got at least 2 people in a relationship anyway for the most part. So bringing it in, being direct, communicating well, has to be a part of setting these boundaries in the first place. And this can be applied to anything from household chores to schedules to how you want to be treated, to things like sex, which are obviously very intimate and require a lot of communication to go well. But then, you know, some people take a lot of that stuff for granted. So having these kind of boundary-based kind of communications and conversations can be really valuable to improving your sex life as well. You know, all of those things, this can be applied to so much. And yet, it's often one of these things that gets really easily ignored by a lot of people. But anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think. Is there anything else that you would add to my list of things to take a look at when it comes to discussing boundaries, setting boundaries, your experiences with when people have overstepped and how you've dealt with it? You know, as I've said before, if you've got a question, or if you've got a thought or a story, then there's a good chance either that question or that thought and story are going to benefit someone else that's watching this video. So please leave them down in the comments. And otherwise, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.